So good after, I was about to say good morning, but it's actually good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth Careers Week talk we have this week. Yeah, just incredible lineup of speakers, and once again, I'm delighted to be joined by Joris Mertens of IBM, who's going to talk to us today about getting started in enterprise computing. Um, as always, I'll just quickly run through. If you have any questions in chat at any point, please just pop them into chat and I'll pick them up and pass them over to Joris. And please do make use of that chat because people always like when there's the opportunity to ask questions to be able to ask them. Um, I think Joris, you can do a much better job of explaining yourself and your talk. So without further ado, I shall hand over to you now and let's hear about some enterprise computing.
Into the world of mainframe. I started as an hardware engineer for IBM, which means I did all the doors and execute whatever the people were doing on that thing. So for me, it was like, okay, this is something interesting. What is it? So luckily, I became very successful within my career, and soon I told my manager, hey, this is all fun what I do, but I want to work on the big guy over there, that big black machine. What is it, and how does that work? So they said, okay, yours, and they sent me to an educational center, and there was this in that education center there was this guy, this educator, a very small Spanish person. He was so fun, and he talked really fast, and he did an introduction of what we're going to learn that week. And meanwhile, he had also that big black box standing next to him. So I was immediately attracted to, okay, this is where the magic happens. And again, I had no clue so far. And he started to tear out all sort of hardware components, literally those big iron, I don't know, boxes, sometimes cables were all over the place. And he just pulled it out up until a point where he could stand behind the machine, look through the machine, looking at us, the audience, and saying, by the way, this is a mainframe computer, and the people who are using it didn't even notice that it's here and that we tear it down for almost 50%. So I was intrigued by that, and again, still not knowing exactly what it does, during that week I learned a lot about the power of mainframe. So in order to give you a little bit of and now I'm going to do something very dangerous, which is changing screens.
I just had a little bit of an issue with that myself, actually. We had a little bit of a sound issue to begin with, but we're up and running now, don't worry. Everyone can see and hear now, so it's fine. But we're good. So yeah, never try and change screens, apparently.
Yeah, so yeah, I think, yeah, we're good to go, right? You can see now that mainframe kind of thing. So this is what a mainframe looks like. And I hope that I'm still coming to the point why this is relevant and why you should care. But I know that nowadays it's kind of hard to just walk into wherever in a data center and pull some doors and take a look, grab some cables, see what it does. So unfortunately, it's really hard to show it in real life. But I like this animation video of the mainframe. So this is an IBM Z16 mainframe. And it's basically just a very large computer system, a very large server system. As you can see, if you open it up, there are a lot of components in it. And what it does have on the bottom side a lot of I/O capabilities. So you have cards with fiber channel attachment, LAN attachment, and every other thing to make it communicate to the outer world. There is no storage included, so there you need external storage for that, so there are connections for that. And the other half is really the CPU environment. And I will show you a little bit more in detail how that looks like. This is a one drawer. You can have several drawers, but for this animation, we have one drawer. So you basically pull it out and you can see what's in it. And you can see that there are memory DIMMs in it and CPUs, just like I would almost say like any other hardware server. So why is it so interesting to see? Oh, wrong button. I just pulled.
People are saying that the animations are incredible on this. People are quite impressed by that.
Yeah, and by the way, I will share the link because this is this catalog is for all the hardware that IBM has, where you can learn and read about all the specifications. And for me, I like the fact that you can actually take a look at, in this case, the processor module. Why am I pointing out specifically this processor module? Mainframes are not using a regular processor like Intel or AMD. They're using their own characteristics and their own design, which we called the S390 or S390X architecture. Why is that important? Well, it's probably not important if you are a developer, but from a background perspective, this CPU is built with the technology that it can run that 2.5 million transactions per second. So in order to fit for purpose, this processor module is actually built specific for that task. If you ask me, hey, how does it run with the graphical interface? Well, it doesn't work at all because that's not the purpose. So it's really specifically aimed for that. You cannot, I don't know, do graphic GPU stuff on it. We don't have a GPU included in the mainframe at all because that's not the purpose of the mainframe. But what we do have, and this is another thing, we also included in that latest Z16, that latest model on the chip, an AI accelerator module. An AI accelerator module is basically a co-processor which handles specifically all the AI interactions. And why is that important? Well, if you think of that 2.5 million transactions every second, if you would like to use AI capabilities, if you would like to run an AI model against those transactions in order to, for example, see if you are a bank and you are doing financial transactions and you would like to measure whether or not that transaction can be perhaps a fraudulent transaction or a wrong transaction in whatever way, it's undoable to have an external AI processor and keeping up with that 2.5 million transactions per second. And therefore, we have included a specific AI module on that chip. By doing that, we can now have real-time AI processing being done for every transaction. And I will talk a little bit later about the companies which are using these kind of systems, but I already told you that in this example, a bank, for example, can use this for fraud transaction or wrongly addressed money transactions in any way. So I think you can understand a little bit about that works.
So essentially, what we're talking about here with architecture like this is it's on-prem, nothing's in the cloud, it's all stored on-prem, and what we're getting here is essentially, if you're ever to work on these sort of infrastructures, you're working on something which is really, obviously the transactions, etc., coming in is probably from the outside world, but it's all being contained in one site, and that allows an increase in security. And so architects that are working on this type of on-prem stuff is mainly around security and complete ownership of their own infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And the other cool feature, I think, if you take a look at what are the buzz days nowadays, what is interesting and what is very important to take in consideration, you already mentioned it, it's the security. So if we're going to take a look at how we do that, and here's the processor, we're going to put that processor drawer, if I'm correctly, nice back in the mainframe. And then we're going to take a look at here it is, the cryptographic card, which is basically more or less a PCI card. It's not a PCI card which you can put into any other machine, but the layout is pretty much the same, with one very distinct difference. This is a physical card which holds your encryption keys. And it does it in a way that if for some reason one of the bad guys thinks or even considers to steal that card out of the machine and take it with them and try to decrypt that data and steal your encryption key, that card will become instantly useless. It will be physically damaged if you pulled it out, and your encryption keys will be lost. Why is that important? Well, security nowadays, it's one of the most common topics if you're talking about IT and IT landscape in a way of architecture. And what we included as well in this IBM Z16 is, and let me put it back, that's this button, is that we work with a level of security which we like to call quantum safe. And I'm not sure if you heard of that, but the level of encryption which we are using on our mainframes are at a level that with the power of the quantum computers which we have nowadays, it's not possible to decrypt that. Because what is happening, what can happen, and we think that it's actually happening now, is that the people with the bad intentions, they're easily harvesting data at the moment. They cannot do anything with it because it's all encrypted, but they're harvesting it and they probably store it somewhere. But what if, I don't know, within 5 years, you can go to your local IT store and there's this mini quantum computer and you can, purchase and bring it home. And I'm pretty sure that's not the case, but it's not unthinkable that quantum technology will become available for general audience and general purpose within a few years. If you then have that very powerful quantum computer, you use that to decrypt your data, which is then probably way easier. You still have data which is probably 60-70% outdated, but at 30 or 40% you can think of passwords, you can think of bank account details or personal information that still can be relevant to have bad intentions with. So what we do, and of course this is all relative, but we use the level on encryption on a level where we say it's for now quantum safe. And of course that will evolve in parallel with the growth of the technology within the quantum computer.
When we talk about that at the moment, I think most people will be able to resonate when they think about that to password length. So for at the moment, if you see something, there's a direct correlation between the amount of compute it takes to break someone's password. So if it's a standard password, you can brute force it in a matter of minutes. And as the character length and the complexity of special characters, etc., increases, that brute force is taking longer and longer and longer. But what we're saying here is with safety being in enterprise architecture so important, that already the way the infrastructure is designed is to ensure that brute forcing, even with quantum power in the future, there's a fail-safe mechanism intrinsically built in for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And from a technical perspective, it happened to be that a while ago I was at a security conference where people were presenting the technical mechanism and all the background which they were using. And I can tell you that after those sessions, I went back to my hotel and I just went to bed and started crying because I could not understand, the level of technology behind it. It's so advanced in some levels, but it's really, really powerful. So this is a mainframe, a single machine mainframe, and you can expand it, etc. So I hope to give you a brief introduction of what a mainframe is. Now, and I also prepared a little bit, some little pictures. There's also a funny movie because normally I start out with a video which shows, the actual mainframe from the inside. It shows you how people are working on the mainframe and how they try to break it into the movies. And if nothing else works, then you always have James Bond running in, shooting the mainframe and it works. So I hope that I busted this view of what a mainframe is a little bit for you. Although it's a nice view, right? Okay. Then take a little bit more about, let's take a look at what those transactions are. And of course, I already mentioned a transaction can be a financial transaction. It can be a payment which you do. But I think many of the large airlines companies are also using mainframe computing in order to make their online bookings. And for example, if you are taking a flight, you purchase your ticket, which is a transaction. But then at a certain point, 24 hours before you leave, you check in online, which is a transaction. When you arrive at the airport, you go through security and your boarding pass is being scanned. That's a transaction. When you go to the gate and you are boarding the airplane, that's a transaction. And probably when you are taking your seat, there's always this flight attendant with an iPad doing some last minute checks. That's probably a transaction as well. Healthcare companies, and especially if we're thinking about that security approach, there are a lot of healthcare companies and insurance companies who use their user-specific information, their personal data, and store that on a mainframe environment, because that's where it's, in many cases, the most safe place. And by the way, I'm not saying, and last but not least, of course, the bank transactions, which are already mentioned as an example.
One of the questions we've got here is Tyler's asking, essentially any data exchange to a database is considered a transaction then?
Exactly.
Literally anything. So as you say, hotel checking in, hotel checkout. Any time that someone's data on a database is that's one transaction, and we're saying that that can handle 2.3 million of those a second.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really a lot. And if you can Google, of course, we from IBM likes IBM, but there are also other companies and independent who have very nice examples of how does that work, how that works. Does that mean that mainframe is the solution for everything? I would say absolutely not, because it's not an expensive machine you buy, and the license, etc., that all comes with it. So how is it being used in a daily operation environment for companies? And that's where I think the combination between cloud environment, perhaps a private cloud solution, perhaps even embedded systems, and whatnot comes all together. And besides the fact that the mainframe is perfect to process those transactions, it's often the combination of a front-end computer system or even a web app which you run on your cell phone. That combination, that interaction makes it very powerful. So what can a mainframe do? It can manage databases. It can be very fast at doing those 2.5 million transactions, and in the background updating all the tables in the database. It can run all of the nowadays modern applications, frameworks, and coding languages. And I will talk a little bit more about that. You can even interact with it in, let's say, the common way which you do with any other system. And this is important to mention, because if you're talking about mainframe, and if people are looking for what a mainframe is and what it does, you often think of that, that scary old school green screen terminal kind of thing.
Yeah.
And sure, we use that as well, but it's not mandatory. And we're even now in a moment where, on average, the companies are moving away to modern interfaces like VS Code or IDZ, which is an IBM a flavor of a GUI-driven developer interface, and many others. On the other hand, think of it if you are using, I don't know, a Linux environment, and you have an Ubuntu environment. If you are not that familiar with it, you probably like the GUI. You like the desktop environment. You can click on it. You can drag and drop. You can use your mouse. But on a certain moment in time, if you are more experienced and you want to do some minor changes, you will probably just do an SSH connection, and you probably can use any iPad, laptop, cell phone, or whatnot to make that connection. And it's the same with mainframe. So people are using that terminal screen, that terminal emulator, for a very lightweight direct interaction. But it's absolutely not per se the standard anymore. And the cool thing is, and this is where we're getting, I think, to the interesting part of this talk, is if you take a look from a career perspective, and if you take a look at the younger generation, and with younger, I don't need per se say younger in terms of age, but in terms of thinking, because there are a lot of reskillers out there. There are a lot of people who,
Correct.
I don't know, worked as a conductor on a train for 20 years, but now want to change their and move their career to IT. All these people, they are very keen on learning it in an easy way. And when they get hired at a company, they say, hey, did you know I learned to interact with the mainframe using, I don't know, VS Code or SSH? And very often the companies itself say, oh, yeah, but yeah, our developers, I'm not sure if they like it. But within a matter of moments, the influence will go over the department, and of course that's what we're there for as well. The modernization part of the interaction with the mainframe is something very important, and it's very easy doable. It's more, in many cases, it's just that people are a little bit afraid of the new, if I can say it like that. And I'm not a native English speaker, so my apologies if it's
No,
not
no, no. I think you said
correct.
it perfectly, because I think the point is as well, when we talk about system architecture and people entering the industry, I think a lot of people instantly think of web development. that's the first place that their mind goes to because it feels accessible. Spinning up a website, even if it's using databases to a certain amount, feels like the most obvious and logical place for people to go because it does feel like these big infrastructures plays are almost unobtainable and they must be for the senior developers like you say that literally don't use a mouse and everything's command driven, etc, etc. But the truth is, as you're saying, that no, because these industries and these technologies are moving on with the industry as well, and obviously there needs to be an influence of new developers and new talent that's coming into that, and
Absolutely.
therefore the mindset shift will happen as well. But also, just the ways that the company operates as well is changing. So I think if I'm understanding correctly, what you're saying here is there is still opportunities for junior developers coming into this space to enter this world, and maybe this is something that most people don't even consider, going into system architecture, etc.
Absolutely, and I would even bring it to a next level. I think the companies, and I'm talking to a lot of companies. I'm based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, but I'm working worldwide, focusing on Europe. So I talk a lot with the Scandinavian countries, the countries in the UK, and the south of Europe. Whenever I talk to a client, they are desperate for the new generation which have that other way of thinking, because if those companies would like to keep up with the modern technology, they want employees who are capable of doing that, or at least are driven to do that, are not afraid of that change. So that's honestly quite a funny conversation we sometimes have. So last slide about the technology. I already told you it's cloud driven, hybrid cloud driven, as we would like to say, the combination of cloud services, a private cloud environment with other systems, and the mainframe makes it very powerful. It's very secure, and I'm not sure if I already mentioned that, but when I showed that machine, we call it the Z16, and when we're talking about mainframes within IBM, we're talking about the IBM Z systems. And that capital Z stands for zero downtime, because it's literally being sold as a machine which is never down. I think on average we have the 5 nines, which we say it's a 99.99997% of uptime, which eventually comes down to less than 3 seconds a year when it's not available. We just don't say 100% because of the legal aspect, and if
Yep.
you can think of any of that. Does that mean that it can't be broken? Sure. I mean, if there's someone with a forklift driving to the data center for another machine and he bumps against the machine, sure, it will break and you will have a problem. But then, in most cases, they have a backup system, they have a mirrored system, a mirrored environment. We're really talking about that level of computing. So this is fun, right? At least I hope that you are thinking, okay, this is quite interesting, but hey, I cannot go to the store and purchase a mainframe myself. I cannot knock on the door of a company, say, hey, can I have your IP address and a username and password in mainframe because I want to play around with it. And we have an answer to that question, because we do have that. We have the IBM Z Explore platform. And the IBM Z Explore platform, it's basically your own piece of mainframe. It's a mainframe, a Z15. So we didn't upgrade it so far, but it's the four last system that we're running it on. It's running somewhere. It's standing in one of the IBM data centers in the New York area. And what we say, we give you an IP address, a user ID, and a password. Okay, but then what? You can probably do an SSH. Hey, yeah, I can go and have a connection with SSH. You can probably put it in with a certain point in your web browser, and you will get a web interface, but you're still not familiar with what you're doing in many cases. So IBM Z Explorer it's free. It's for anyone with an interest on that mainframe computer, and it's available throughout the year. So everyone can go to the IBM Z Explorer platform. We created a quick link, which is ibm.biz/IBM Z Explorer, or you just Google it. You will get a landing page, and it will be guided. And I always like to say, we will guide you from zero to hero. Step one, if you log on, you get your user ID and a password. And the first introduction of how to set up your workstation. You need to install VS Code. You need to install Node.js plugin, which is mandatory in order to do all the functionality. And from there, they say, okay, let's create a profile, right click, put your user ID, name, IP address in it, and some parameters, and then you are connected. And I just included a small screenshot of my workstation this morning, where I was playing around with COBOL, so you can actually interact with the live mainframe. We are currently over 35,000 active users. So coming back to the strength of the system, we have on just one logical partition, which is a virtual piece of the machine, we have 35,000 active users, and it's running like a charm, and we absolutely like it. If you have that first challenge, that VSC, you have set up your machine. If you completed that, you hit a button, you get the next one. And it's probably called something like files or files and folders or something similar. And the reason behind it is, in the world of mainframe, we're not talking about files and folders, but data sets and data set members. And why we do that, it's a long story. It's very powerful again, but the terminology can sometimes differ of what you know. And you do a small challenge which basically create your own data set, which is a folder, and a data set member, which is a file. And absolutely people will tap me on the head for me saying this, but on average, think of it like that. And you can start playing around, put some data in it, query on the data, and do your first steps. If you completed that, you will have several other steps. You will make your connection using the Unix system services, because it's a Unix-based operating system, what we are using. It's COS called. So it's not Linux, but Unix-based. But Linux is also Unix-based, which means that a lot of commands like the ls, the cat commands, the touch commands, it's 9 out of 10 times works perfectly on a mainframe environment yourself. And if you go throughout those challenges, which will take on average, I don't know, 30 to 45 minutes, if you complete that, you will end up with getting your first badge. If you have the fundamentals, which is a group of basic challenges and some background conceptual challenges, you will get your badge. That's that red badge. Awesome. Why is that interesting? Why would you care about that badge? Well, you can put it on your resume, you can put it on your LinkedIn, but then what? Well, the mainframe community is very eager and very, very vibrant. It's very, everybody knows what's going on. And if a company is looking for new hires and they see those badges, and even if you go a step further, you have your advanced badges, which is another, if you complete another set of challenges, that's the proof that you have gained some basic knowledge on ZOS on the mainframe. Does that mean that you can start tomorrow working as a developer on the mainframe? Probably not. But from there on, those companies are using that as a starting point to board you into the platform. And this is where I want to talk a little bit about in my next slide. Because now I talked about the technology, I talked about mainframe, and of course we from IBM like mainframe because, you know, I'm a mainframer. But why would you care? Why is it interesting?
Sorry to interrupt. Just we've got a couple of questions in. A few people saying that this is something they want to do. So just to confirm that those challenges are step by step, and it will guide you through how to do that to be able to get your accreditation. Because one of the things we're always saying to people is, you know, find some way to, when you're going into a career, is how do you differentiate yourself? You know, we heard from someone from Google yesterday who was saying, go and build a project that you love. And that's one fantastic way. But I think the other way here is get some accreditations in something a little bit different. It's like, people are saying you're definitely going to do this. It's such a cool idea. I love that it's made accessible to everyone. Yep. You know, so for us, it's like, hey, this is now something else. And, you know, just being realistic, having something that demonstrates that you've gone one step further, and an accreditation that's linked to IBM as well. You know, this is something that people can easily, you say it's 45 minutes to an hour, even if it takes you 3-4 hours because it's your first time and you're being guided through it, etc. That's something that differentiates yourself, as you say.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm forgetting something really important, because I'm just like a proud new dad at the moment, because yesterday we had an event called Z-Day, which is an event, a virtual event, 24-hour sessions, just like you're doing this week, specifically on that mainframe. And for that reason, we have posted a codeathon, a mini 1-hour codeathon, where you immediately start learning to write your own COBOL program. COBOL is a programming language still very commonly used because it's very powerful, but not known by everybody, to interact with the DB2 environment and execute JCL statements. And we have included some breadcrumbs which you have to follow in order to solve a riddle, etc. So if you are boarding the IBM Z Explore platform now, we have it open for 1 week, you will see a TAL microcodathon. You can start immediately with that. The boarding and the setup of the workstation is included in that as well. And it's the tool, and it's all hands-on driven, it's all guided, and we also have a very strong forum on the landing page of Z Explore. You will see it immediately, and most of the common problems and questions which you will probably run into are being mentioned there. But there's also a very active community around it with enthusiastic people, students, IBMers, whoever is interested to help you out. And I think, and that's what I wanted to show you now is, besides the technology, what is going on in that strange world of that mainframe and enterprise computing? Because why would you choose a career for that enterprise computing and that mainframe environment? And what is it different from, I don't know, any distributed environment or whatnot? And I'm pretty sure that it's not something which will fancy everybody. If you want to work at a small company where you have this vibe going on with direct influence end to end, then it's probably not the best fit. Because if you're talking about enterprise computing, you're talking obviously about, in many cases, the enterprise companies, the big airline companies, all the banks, etc. But still, for a lot of people, it can be very interesting. And I think you already mentioned that, James. With Z skills, you have a unique skill set. Your skills are in a field of expertise where there is so much rooms for job opportunities and career opportunities. And I always like to say you're choosing a career and not just a job. And the reason I'm saying that, if you are focusing on that enterprise computing, it's not just executing a task. You're an administrator or whatnot. There are, sometimes thousands of different opportunities in ways of working in that environment. You can work on a technical level. You can work on an administration level. You can work on an architectural level, on an infrastructure level, on a leadership level. So the fact that you know that world of enterprise computing is really interesting for those larger companies, because they are all using that. The other thing, and that's perhaps a little bit a personal flavor, I always want to say, be relevant in what you do. When I start working, when I finished my education, I start working, and the first thing you do is, you just start dragging in money, because I'm playing guitar, as you can see, and I wanted to have my first real guitars, and I want to spend everything, and I want to buy a house, etc. But eventually, if you are at a certain point and you are thinking, hey, what am I doing? What does it brings me? What can I give back to that community? And I think in that mainframe industry, you're working with companies who are always very much focusing on an approach where they make you relevant as a person, where you're not replaceable by any other person within a week. And as well in there, and that's my next bullet, in your corporate responsibility, with a typo, my apologies for that. Take a look at that mainframe from an infrastructure perspective. And this is low-hanging fruit, I know that, but for example, the power consumption of a mainframe, if you compare it with, with a clustered Intel environment, it reduces it with more than 60% only in your CO2 footprint. So from that perspective, it can be very useful to use mainframe computing compared to clustered Intel computing. Does it solve all the problems? No, because as said, it's built for a specific goal. But the whole mindset of how to use it, what and what not run on that mainframe, that's something which is really embedded in the way of how the architectural environment is being set up. So how it's being designed. And what I like is where you always work with the state-of-the-art technology. Already mentioned quantum safe, the AI encryption. We are now at the Z16, so our next machine will be probably the Z. We call it Z next because we don't know if we will call it Z17. Who knows? Perhaps we think of a very other fancy name. But I'm pretty sure that all the latest technology, which is now upcoming and ongoing, will be included in that new piece of infrastructure as well. And the last thing, and I'm looking at the time, we're almost done for this talk, and I already mentioned that becoming part of the community. The most important, and that's not, again, because I am IBM and I like IBM, but becoming part of the community, the enterprise and mainframe community, it is so close. If you take a look at the companies who are using that, if you take a look at the service providers, the software companies who are providing the software platforms for it, we have so many events going on online, offline, where we say, okay, company A to company B, hey, we are trying to work this out, and we would like to, I don't know, include this piece of technology. We would like to work with REST API enablement to our mobile app. And in many cases, it's really normal to have that conversation of, hey, what's your solution? Hey, you can think of this piece of software to work with, etc. If you are boarding in that platform, you will see that there are many opportunities where you can interact with the companies, with the partners, with IBM, and we try to nurture that. And when I started my story, that's my role, to make that connection. So where can you find it? We have the Z Systems Global Student Hub. So for students, and again, students, not basically anyone who is currently in the process of learning, that's a student in my opinion. They can freely join that platform, and there are events being posted. This one was from yesterday, where we did a roundtable with sometimes with a group of developers, IBMers, not IBMers, and you can ask them questions. You can be very skeptic. You can be very critical to them, because it's an honest story. And sometimes, and I noticed that, is that there are conversations going on where those developers who are working on a specific piece of the environment also say, hey, you probably want to go to my colleague, and whether if that's internal or external, that's probably a better solution. So we have all kind of flavors, and it's very fun to learn it that way.
Joris, I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think this links into a few of the questions here around, to get into this field, would you start with exploring and doing certifications? Would you start by going to events? In your experience, how are people getting hired into the junior roles? And linked, so I'll link the next question after that.
Yeah, no
is this your sort of entry point, do you think, events, or how would you get into that space?
Yeah, so that's the next slide is my last slide, where I say, okay, what is the call to action? What if you're interested, or even if you're not sure if you're interested, how can you, touch it? How can you sniff on it, see if it's something for you? Yes, we have these events, and these are some pictures. And here on the third picture, that's me. This was actually a user group meeting. This was, I think, in Scandinavia, where the Scandinavian banks, insurance companies, all let's say the CTOs were coming together. And that guy, and I don't see if you see properly, this guy, he was a student, and he just finished his education, and we did a codeathon that day. So we did a coding challenge, and we asked him, hey, can you come on stage and tell a little bit about your experience? And he literally talked to the CTOs, and he said, oh, and by the way, my internship ends next week. If you're interested, please hire me. And this was 4 or 5 months ago. That guy is now actually working at one of those companies. So whenever we're at an event and he is there, like, hey, remember the time when we
Yeah,
were
that's
at
great.
students? We have many, many examples of that. Um, IBM.biz/Z student, that's basically our landing page where you can find a link to that Z Explore platform. Because coming back to your question, okay, what can we do? Because you gave us a load of information. You talked about events, you talked about the learning platform, you talked about the community. Okay, where to start? My answer would be start where you would feel the most comfortable with. If you want to start on a technical level, start playing around with IBM Z Explore. This is a screenshot of the landing page, and here that white, that's that micro codeathon. It's there for a week. By doing that, you can learn it from a technical perspective. You can learn about all the technology and see if it's something which you like. And if not, I mean, that's okay, but at least you have chosen then that it's not for you. Join the Student Hub. The Student Hub, this is where we post our events, everything what is going on. And for example, the first week of October, we are at an user group event near Silverstone, where all the companies from the UK are coming together. And I think there are over 400 people joining. And we were able to invite a group of students as well, I think 30 or 40 students, to say, hey, come over, we do a fun hackathon, we meet the companies, meet the clients, talk about your piece of interest, and all the people who really understand the business are there. So, and I mean, I have basic knowledge about mainframe, but don't ask me anything about that AI accelerate and how to program that. Hopefully within a year, I'm up to speed on that topic. But no, we open this community up for you to see if you can fit and match. And the last thing, it's our general landing page, ibm.biz/Z talent. The IBM Z talent page, that's basically the top page, and then you have that IBM study student page, specifically a user group for students. We are there as administrators. You can start a blog post. You can ask us one by one, and I think all our email addresses or LinkedIn or whatnot is posted there. I would be always very happy to continue a conversation if you would like. So don't hesitate to contact me on LinkedIn or via email if you're interested in more. But I would say take one of those three options to explore if this interest, if this infrastructure piece of infrastructure and technology is something you would like.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Will you be able to share those slides or those links again?
Yeah, I will.
People are trying to get onto them now. I'm like, well, hold on, because yeah, make sure that people can get onto those. I'm super conscious of time, and apologies for that. If we have any questions, is it okay for me to send over to you as well afterwards? Are you okay to answer those?
Yeah, and you can. I think everybody, if you're looking at Joris Mertens IBM, you will find me on LinkedIn, and you can always send me a chat message if you would like to know more. If you're interested in where these events are, because we're having many at the moment all over the world, but in Europe as well. So, and I would always more than happy to make sure that the students are included in those events as well.
Incredible, thank you. I think you've answered the question that we just had come through about next steps. Someone's asking here as well is, would you say that this field's directly linked to networking and cybersecurity as well? And is this a natural progression if you're interested in cybersecurity to go this route?
Well, yeah, cybersecurity, it's a very broad topic as well. But I think I think absolutely, if you're interested in the field of the cybersecurity, this is absolutely something which is being covered in the enterprise computing or the mainframe environment as well, because we are always far more working on get it all as secured as possible in any way. So it covers all the aspects. If you're talking about cybersecurity, if you're talking about data and AI, perhaps this is the vehicle where many companies rely on.
Yeah. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, just to sort of try and sum up some of the things that people are saying in chat here is, yeah, enterprise generally is obviously larger organizations, which means in that, generally there's a great junior hiring program happening because they've got a constant talent movement that's going through with such large job openings. And I think that the thing for me, it differentiates between, as I said earlier, most people who are coming in perhaps at the junior level generally think front end. They
Yep.
generally think about web development. And here's an opportunity for you to, explore what it means in enterprise. We've three programs that are infinitely available and accessible. So,
Yep.
Joris, I want to thank you for your time today. I'm sorry we've got to go short, but what I will do, if that's okay, is I'll share those links and
Yep.
also share, as I said, your LinkedIn as well, if that's okay, um, and allow people to get in touch and move forward with that.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to meet every one of them who is interested in that. And thank you for having me here today. And let me know if there are questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll speak to you
Thank
soon.
you very much. Okay.
Cheers.
Bye,
Bye bye.
everyone.